Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plots, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Tomatoes get big and have to have support. Today we're going to look at several ways to hold them up. Also, we'll show how to calibrate your spreaders. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Peter Richards. Peter is our local garden expert. Hi, Peter. It's warming up. People are anxious to get their vegetables into the ground. Of course, tomatoes are high on everybody's list to grow, right?
Yeah, no, they're definitely the queen of the garden.
Yes. So let's show the folks a few ways you can support your tomato growth.
Yes. Okay, so the traditional way that people think, oh, support tomatoes is tomato cages. Just like this one. This is a large tomato cage. You can get them even smaller than this, but they don't really support tomatoes.
All right.
They're really good for peppers, but if you look here, we have a poor tomato plant.
That's a good example.
Yeah, and you notice it knocked the cage right over. There's no support here. It's all over the ground. It's very, there's lots of fungus as a result because the water was able to splash up even down at the end where it was laying on the ground, so it just didn't work. I don't recommend using regular tomato cages.
Okay.
So I said for peppers, they work really good because the peppers stay smaller, but not for tomatoes.
So for peppers and not tomatoes. All
Right.
Gotcha.
Okay, now, if we look here at this next one, this is also a tomato cage, but this is much heftier and a lot bigger.
Yes, sturdier.
Yeah, so what I did here was I took 4 pieces of cattle panel and I wired them together in a couple places, so it created a square. And with cattle panel, because it's in the grid, I cut it so that there were spikes on the bottom and just kind of put the spikes in.
Okay.
And it holds up really good. You can tell that
Sturdy.
it holds the tomato plant up, keeps it all off the ground. This would work really good for a determinate tomato plant.
Okay.
But if you have an indeterminate tomato plants and your tomato plants grow a lot vegetatively through the year, this might end up actually being too small. You can see that it started to come out the top here. When we're taping this, we're at the end of the year, so it's not a big deal. But you know, if it grew much more than this, it's going to go right back down to the ground again.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you this. So let's tell the folks again about determinate and indeterminate tomatoes. What's the difference?
So determinate tomatoes will grow up to a certain point, and then they basically stop growing. And they put on all their fruit at once, which can be something you want. So that's the kind of tomato plant that commercial growers grow because you can go through and you can pick the field a couple times and you're done. Indeterminate tomato plants are tomato plants that just keep growing and growing and growing until they get killed by frost or something else. And so a lot of times home gardeners like those because you can pick them all through the year and they keep going all year long. And a little secret on the determinate or the indeterminate tomato plants. So if you have an end like this right here, so this is the end of a vine, if you pinch off the end right there, that will stop the growth. Now, it will try and grow somewhere else with the sucker, but you've stopped that branch.
Got it.
And so that takes care of the growth there. So you can kind of control it a little bit.
Good tip. Good tip.
So let's move on here to the Florida weave.
All right.
And this is another way that you can support your tomatoes. As the tomatoes grow, as they get up about 8 inches, 10 inches above the previous string you've put in, you just put a string from one post to another and back again. So you just kind of, you're holding them up as they grow. Now, you can see that there is a problem here, and that is that they all tended to fall this way this year. And so if you have more than a couple tomato plants, I'd recommend that you put a stake maybe every 2 tomato plants and then weave it there. So that way they can't fall too far at once. This is a great method. Once again, might work a little better on indeterminate plants because you do have a limited amount of height before you run out of stake. It's good. It can be difficult because it's hard to get the fungicide in, and it's hard to because the tomatoes tend to get very dense in the middle. But it keeps your fruit off the ground, it keeps the tomatoes off the ground, it keeps the tomatoes compact, you know, so they're really in a very narrow line
Okay. And that's what
so-
you want, yeah.
Yeah, and you can
That's what
keep
you
your
want.
tomato plants. You can put more tomato plants in because you could put a line of tomatoes here, and really you only need 3 foot over. You could put another line of tomatoes and still get in between them
Okay.
to work them during the year.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
It also makes it easier to harvest your tomatoes
Yep.
as well.
Yep. Okay, so this is the first time I've tried this method, and what this is this is just a horizontal cattle panel.
Okay.
The tomato plants grow up through the cattle panel, and then as they get heavy, they fall back down on it, but it keeps them off the ground.
All right.
And
This
so,
is lay right across.
yeah.
Okay.
And so this is the first time I've done this this method, but I did it about 24 inches off the ground. If I did it again, I would probably take it down to about 18 inches off the ground.
Okay.
Reason being that the tomato plants started to fall over before they got up through the cattle panel.
Right, gotcha.
I've been pretty pleased with this.
So you like this?
I
okay.
kind of like this, yeah.
method. Okay.
It takes a lot of space. That's its downside, really, is because this is about a 4 foot by 4 foot space for 2 tomato plants, which, compared to Florida
Yeah.
weed, is quite a bit of space.
Yeah.
But it was very easy to go in and treat with fungicide
Okay.
because I could spray above and then I could
Gotcha.
spray underneath. The benefit kind of is that the bottom part of the plant, the leaves, got blighted and fell off. And so it made it so all the vegetative growth was right here on the
Gotcha.
level. This, just like the other ones, is made out of cattle panel, which you can get at your local big box hardware store or at your farm supply store. You have to have pretty heavy, probably bolt cutters to
Oh,
cut it.
okay.
But if you have those, it's really easy to do. And then
And
T-posts,
T-posts?
which are easy to find and they're fairly cheap. And so that's pretty easy, but that's the basis of all of these.
Okay.
So then,
All right, we'll look at the next one.
yep. So this next one here, this is a single stake per tomato plant. And what you do is, as the tomato plant grows, you use some sort of saw fabric. In this case, I cut up an old bed sheet and you tie it up towards the stake.
Okay.
It's pretty good. It has, I think its big weakness is that you end up with a whole bunch of growth
That's a lot
concentrated
of
in one
growth.
spot.
It sure is.
And so that
Yeah.
kind of invites the diseases and the blights to get it.
So how about treating it with the fungicide? Was it easy for you to do so?
Yes
'cause
and
it
no.
is
You can
bunch
get all the
there.
way around it pretty
Yeah.
easy, but you're sticking your wand in, and
Gotcha.
you're not sure if you get all of it. But as you can see, this right here, this would be a branch that I'd come back in here and tie it up so it's about that far away,
Okay.
and just kind of keep gathering it up as it goes. Now, if you have an indeterminate tomato plant, it can get really tall.
Yes.
Which, if you've noticed here, this is actually this pipe was made by Tom Mashur,
Yeah,
who's shown us how to use it in the past. But you can continue now to it can go up.
Yeah.
You got about 10 feet that you could continue to gather it up. Now it's close to the end of the season when
Yeah.
we're taping this, so I've just kind of let it go.
Okay.
But you can
Yeah, but that's how
continue
you
to
do it. Yeah.
continue to go. Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Now this last one, and this one is actually my favorite.
It's your favorite. Huh?
Now it's not my favorite because it's easy, because this one actually takes a fair amount of work. And what this is when the tomato plants were little, I cut them or I pruned them so that I only had 2 or 3 main branches.
Okay.
And then I wrapped them around string that was attached to this top cross post up here. And so as they continue to grow, I wrapped them. And then the other thing you have to do is you
lot
have
of
to
work.
cut off all the suckers as they grow. So, for instance, this right here is a sucker, and you can tell it's a sucker because there's a leaf right here, and it has grown out between the main stem and the leaf.
Right.
So you cut those off. Best place to get it is when they're really little, like this right here.
Yeah.
And then you can just
those
take it
off.
off with your thumbnail and it's good to go. But something I really like about this, and you can see that there's not a lot of blight
It's not.
on this plant.
It is not.
And the reason is you cut the leaves off as you go. So
Okay.
every week or so you come out and you cut off the bottom 3 leaves of each vine. And so what happens is before the blight has a chance to get established, you've cut it off the plant.
Which is so good.
Yeah. And
So
so,
good. Because you don't have to worry about it spreading that way.
right,
Yeah,
it doesn't
that's so
spread.
good.
You don't I've grown plants like this where I've maybe sprayed them twice in the whole year and I don't have any blight on them. Or at least not till the very end when they slow down.
Right.
When they slow down, then the blight starts to catch up with it.
Sure.
But yeah, so I really like this because if you're gonna go organic, in my opinion, this is the only way to do it. And you can do it. And your tomato plants will last longer than, mid-July.
Wow. So it's good to get the fungicide on it, and it's also good to harvest.
Yeah, it's easy to harvest. Now,
Easy to harvest.
you can see that the tomato plants have gotten up close to the top.
Pretty close.
I made this really tall. You don't have to make it that tall. You can make it a little bit
How
shorter.
tall is it?
It's probably about 9 feet.
Okay.
But you could make it a little shorter if you wanted to. But you should come up with a way as the tomato plants grow, when they get to the top, have extra string up there
Okay.
and kind of start moving them down the board. And so you'll have vine at the bottom and then they'll go up.
Gotcha.
And as you continue to prune them, they continue to grow.
Any special type of string that folks
I've
need to be
used
concerned about? Or?
I've used several different kinds of string. The cheapest stuff I can get at the store. I would probably stay away from a cotton or maybe another organic string. The reason being that it may not last the season.
Right. It's going to be out in the weather.
Right. Some of the cheaper, like the thin ropes I've used, will last about 2 years, and then what'll happen is they'll start breaking.
Okay.
And so it'll break, and you'll come out, and your tomato plant will be on the ground, and you'll have to string it back up. So I recommend new string every year.
New string every year.
But this is thin nylon twine. It'll hold up just fine this year. It's cheap.
Okay.
Throw it away. Get new stuff this year.
Get new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I like this method too. This is pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, and this I learned from doing hydroponics,
Hydroponics.
because this is how they do
Yeah,
it in the
yeah.
hydroponic greenhouses.
How about that?
Yep.
All right. Well, Peter, it's good information. We appreciate the demonstration.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a great example of spring dead spot. The thing about spring dead spot is this: it actually starts in the fall of the year. If we have a wet fall, you're most likely going to have spring dead spot in your warm season grasses. It is a fungal disease. As you can see, this area is bleached out, but the other grasses around it are actually starting to transition through the green period. How do you control spring dead spot? Well, you have to use a fungicide. I want you to read and follow the label on that fungicide. It is going to be a Lund fungicide. There's a ready to use, and there's also a liquid concentrate that you can put in a 2 or 3 gallon container. So again, read and follow the label. If you just leave it alone and don't treat it, it just gets worse. It's probably going to be multiple applications, but in the meantime, make sure that you're getting your soil tested and you're fertilizing according to your soil test analysis. All right, Celeste, so we said that there's going to be some math involved, where now's the time for that math.
Yes, we
So what are you
did.
going to show us?
Okay, well, we're going to talk about proper fertilizer application on our lawns. For homeowners, when you get your soil sample results, they're usually going to be recommending to apply a certain amount of pounds of product per 1,000 square feet of lawn.
Okay.
So before we get ready to get out there and put our fertilizer out, we need to make sure that our spreaders are applying that fertilizer at the appropriate rate.
Right.
So what we want to do is a little on-the-fly calibration. We're not going to get real technical with it.
Okay. On the fly.
On the fly
Okay.
calibration. So for example, say that your application rate is supposed to be 2 pounds of triple 15 or triple 13
Okay.
per 1,000 square feet. We are going to actually test that theory to make sure that your spreader is working properly. You want to set your gauge on your rotary type spreader. This is a broadcast spreader. It's a rotary type, so that means the fan spins and disperses it. That's going to give you the best coverage.
Okay.
We want to make sure we set our setting at the appropriate rate. Your fertilizer bags usually tell
Yeah,
you
it does.
what rate to set that on. So that takes guesswork out of that. Next, you need to determine how wide the width of your spread is.
Okay.
That's easy to do. You can go out on the pavement, push a few feet, and see, measure the width of where you've thrown your fertilizer. We know that this spreader has a 5-foot width spread.
Okay.
So we are going to push it for approximately 100 feet. 100 times 5 is 500 square feet, right?
Yeah.
So that's half of 1,000. So our application said 2 pounds per 1,000. We've measured 1 pound of fertilizer, and we're going to push it across 500 square feet.
Makes
So
sense.
when I get to the end, if I still have fertilizer left, I push too fast, or my gauge isn't set properly, and we need to open that gate a little higher.
Okay.
If you run out before you get to the end, then you're pushing way too slow, or your door is way too wide open and you need to lower it, okay?
Okay.
So I think we're gonna do a little demo pushing it, and then we'll see where we end up.
All right, Celeste, what do you think?
All right, well, we got pretty close.
Pretty close.
We don't have much fertilizer left in the bottom of our hopper there.
Okay.
So that means that we got, we were pretty accurate as far as our speed. Like I said, there's a little left, so I may have been able to walk a little slower.
Okay.
Slow my pace down a little bit, and then we'd pretty much be on target. Like we said before, if you'd had quite a bit left, you want to slow your speed down considerably, and maybe consider raising your gate there that lets your fertilizer out as you walk. So I think that was a good example of how you can
think it was.
do a on-the-fly calibration right out in your own yard.
On the fly
Yep.
with some good junior high math, right?
There you go. There you go.
All right, well, let's talk about some other applicators we have out here. So you want to start with the spray?
Yeah, sure we can.
Okay.
Okay, lots of spray application rates, especially for herbicides and insecticides especially, are going to also give their recommendation rates in ounces per gallon.
Right.
But then they will specify that you need to use that 1 gallon of water over a certain amount of area. And that's where a lot of people get poor insect and poor weed control when they're trying to apply these, because they're not getting the appropriate amount of solution on the appropriate area. So one way that you could make sure that you're doing that properly before you actually mix your herbicide or insecticide in there is that you could fill it up with just water and mark off a 10 by 10 foot area. That's 100 square feet.
All right.
And apply your liquid, or actually I would just go ahead and do a 10 by 100 as long as it's just water, and cover that area. And if you use your entire gallon, then you know that you are applying it at the appropriate amount.
Okay.
If you have some left, then that means you need to walk
up
slower
a little bit.
with your
Okay.
applications.
Okay.
So that's another quick calibration method for handheld, even backpack sprayers.
Yeah.
And it's going to vary a little bit because you're always having to
You
pump
gotta
up
pump
the
it.
pressure.
Right, that's right.
So you want to try to maintain, as a good even pressure as you can while you're doing that.
Because of course with these you can build up enough pressure before you even get started, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean it's going to
gonna go down,
decrease
sure.
as you go down. So you've got
Right.
to take that into account also.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now what about a hose-in sprayer?
Hose-in sprayers are great. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. You don't have to do really any calibration because it's doing it for you. This is the simplest kind that you can get. If it calls for 2 ounces per gallon, you put 2 ounces of chemical in it, and then you fill it up with water to the line that says 1 gallon. You hook your hose up to it and you start spraying. And when it runs out of material in your bottle, you've sprayed 2 gallons.
Okay.
So that's a pretty easy, straightforward way. There's some that have dials on the
Yeah,
top
I've seen
and you
those.
have to set them yourself.
Right.
So that gets a little more tricky.
I think I'll stick with that one then.
Yeah, me too.
No math.
Yeah, no math.
Right. Now, what about our handheld rotary spreader?
Handheld spreaders, I think, are great for homeowners that have really small lawns. Or if you're needing to do a spot spreading for maybe you're trying to fill in some empty holes in your lawn with some seed. These are great for that.
Okay.
But you can also do granular fertilize out of them. And there's really no way to do calibrations with these. I'd say the most important thing to remember is that you need to always have a little bit of overlap, and that way you don't end up with bands that haven't gotten any fertilizer. It's really going to show up when that grass starts growing. You're going to have really dark green bands that have grown a lot, and then you'll be able to see the yellower tints from where your fertilizer didn't get applied.
Okay. And you know what? And that also applies for this as well.
It does.
Yeah, so you have to do some overlapping, to make
does.
sure you get good coverage.
And another tip on that is if you have an irregularly shaped yard, say that your lot's not a perfect square or rectangle.
mine is not.
No, hardly anyone's is. You probably want to do your perimeter first And that way you make sure you get coverage in those odd areas because we're going to be doing our applications mostly in vertical, horizontal lines.
And that's exactly what I do. And one last thing that I like to let people know is, look, if that fertilizer gets in your driveway, make sure you sweep it back up into your lawn because you don't want that to go down the water sewage system.
Definitely.
I mean, there's fish at the end of that chain, so we definitely don't want the fertilizer to get down in there.
Make sure we get that fertilizer put on the appropriate area.
That's right.
For sure.
All right, Celeste, thank you for that demonstration. We
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
that.
No problem.
Well, the daffodils and the tulips have all finished blooming, but you can see there are seed heads left. Well, if you want it to be more attractive while you're waiting for the foliage to die down to enrich the bulbs for the next year's bloom, you can cut them. And so I'm going to cut down these. You notice you don't want them to go to seed. So you want to cut the seed heads off because you want the energy to go down into the bulb to renew the bulb and not to go to seed. And we'll just keep going and get rid of all of these seed heads. But it is important to leave the foliage to die down naturally so it is able to put energy back into the bulb so that they can bloom again. Now all the seed heads are gone, so the plants can concentrate their energy on enriching the bulbs so that it'll bloom next year. And doesn't it look a lot nicer than seeing all those seed heads?
So here's our first viewer email. What is this plant? It is very happy in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. This is Lisa on Facebook. I like that. It is very happy. Nice picture there,
Yes.
Lisa. So, Dylan, what do you think that is? I think you might know this one.
It makes me want
pretty
to
good.
sneeze.
Yeah. All right.
Because it's ragweed.
Ragweed, yeah.
And that's what causes hay fever in the fall for everybody. Yeah, it's ragweed.
I'd be
But
sneezing
it looks so
already.
good.
Well, of course
So
it
happy.
does.
Yeah,
It's a weed in this area.
Right.
So,
Oh,
in fact, for a large part of the United States, is a weed, native weed. So, yeah.
Yeah, you see it pretty much all around
Everywhere.
the landscape here.
man.
You know, side of the road. Yeah, I've seen it out in fields. Yeah, you see it everywhere.
Don't have me sneezing. Don't have me sneezing all the time, man. I be doing it, man.
It's
Woo.
ragweed,
That
so,
ragweed have me going then.
So it is nice and happy there. So thank you for that, Lisa. We appreciate
Look
that.
good that on it.
It's definitely nice and happy. All right, here's our next viewer email. What do you think about getting seed from the grocery store to plant? I'm not talking about the packs of seeds. I'm talking about the bags of beans and corn and things you can buy by the pound to cook. Can I also use seeds from tomatoes, butternuts, pumpkins, sweet potatoes, and potatoes? Will seeds in fruit and dry packages from the grocery store grow and come back true and edible? I've got seed from kiwi and planted them, and they have come up and grown, and we ate them. This is Roger from Yadkin, North Carolina. So interesting question, right?
Very interesting.
Very interesting question. They want to get some seeds. So let's look at the first one. So can I also use seeds from tomatoes, butternut, pumpkins, sweet potatoes, and potatoes? So what do you think, Joe?
I'd say yes.
Okay.
The one thing you got to remember, a lot of the fruit that you're getting from the store is a hybrid. So the seed that comes from it will not be exactly the plant that you had before.
So not true to form.
Yeah, it's not
Right.
true.
Okay.
But the potatoes, in sweet potatoes, they sometimes put some kind of retardant gas or something in them that causes them to not produce eyes.
Okay, right.
So that I would just wait and see if they started producing eyes, and if they did, then you can plant them. But if they don't, that's because it's purposely done so they don't produce eyes.
Okay. Okay. Booker,
Yeah,
anything you like to add?
like seed from hybrid, you know, they don't come true from that, and stuff in there. But before I do that, put them in my yard, garden, I'll try to plant some wet paper towel and just kind of see what happens.
See they germinate?
See where they germinate and everything before I go out there and sow lots of them into my garden and everything. I just look at them and see if they don't come true. Are they going to germinate?
Right.
And then so I would try that first and see what happens.
All right. Yeah,
It's
so
easy to do with beans.
yeah, and I was about to mention you can do that with
Corn.
beans.
Beans,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's gonna be
just
easy
see what
enough,
happens.
to
They
be able
come-
to do that. Yeah, so tomatoes, I would say, peppers, I would say, and your beans and peas. Yeah, I would definitely give that a shot.
Get a shot and see what happens.
Yeah, I would definitely do that.
Even
And
the
it-
butternut squash would
Yeah.
be all right.
I would give it a shot. And something else, Roger, that I would do, this is gardening. I would experiment. I would just try it. We all try, a lot of seeds and things like that at home. Give it a shot and just see what happens.
Just see what happens. Yeah.
He already tried it with the kiwi.
Yeah.
It worked.
It worked, yeah.
Right. So I would encourage you, Roger, just go ahead and try it. Yeah, give it a shot. But we know that the success rate for things like tomatoes and peppers and beans may be a little higher, but I would just give it a shot.
Yeah, they say can't hurt nothing.
No,
see,
we're all, I mean, everybody's at home, has been at home, so, just
Try it.
try something.
Try it, Roger. And we appreciate that question, but it's a good question.
Very good.
Question. Okay. All right, so Brooke and Joel, that was fun.
It was good.
enjoyed that.
That's
Yeah,
fun. That was good.
enjoyed that.
Thank
man.
y'all much.
Good
Thank y'all much.
questions.
Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is questions@familyplotgarden.com. And the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us. If you want to learn more about anything we talked about today, head on over to familyplotgarden.com. We have over 1,000 videos to help you make your garden the best that it can be. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.